Hello all and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by hunky, hairy, huggable homos who love film to discuss movies and sometimes dish up a little bit of film news. Got a fun, I don't know, show for you this week. We're going to be reviewing Neighbors 2, the follow-up sequel comedy thing, starring Seth Rogen and Zac Efron. But before we get to that, as well as some movie news, because it's time we did that, let me introduce you to my fantastic co-hosts. Jim Pugliafico is with us. Welcome, Jim.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
And Will Lindis is here with us as well. Welcome, Will.
Hey there, boys and girls and everything in between. Glad to have you back with us.
All right. So, movie news. I think are we ready to just dive right into it? You think? Maybe.
Sure.
Yeah. We love movie news here. Let's do it.
All right, then we're just gonna kick it off right away with some movie news. All right, so this is the part of the show where we talk about fun stuff going on in the film world that we're excited about, and maybe you will be too. I'm going to kick things off this week. So I saw the new teaser trailer for the Disney live-action / CGI remake of Beauty and the Beast. We've been talking about like Disney's penchant lately to go back and live action redo some of their older animated films, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I guess is subjectively up to you. We saw The Jungle Book recently, which Jim and I thought was amazing. Will thought it was a flaming turd of tiger poo, but mileage varies, right?
Yeah.
Cinderella, we were all kind of a little up in the air about. But I'm excited for this one. Emma Watson is coming in, doing her little toned down Hermione shtick, I hope, playing Belle in the title role. We really didn't get to see a lot in this teaser because it is just a teaser trailer, but I really, I loved the design of the castle. I loved the music that they used. There's if you remember from the animated movie, there's sort of this cool piano piece that opens it up in the prologue where they're telling the story of how the prince became the beast, and that's the piece that they used for the trailer. And I don't know, I dug it. It definitely set the atmosphere very well. Will, have you seen the teaser?
I have. I did get a chance to watch it, and I'm kind of two minds of it right now. I really liked the teaser trailer. It looked really interesting. It looks like it's got some interesting atmosphere. And when I think about all of the Disney animated movies, I think, gun to my head, I'm supposed to pick one that I like the best. Give me the animated Beauty and the Beast movie. I think that's my favorite Disney film to date. So if there's any film that I think I might gravitate towards as a live-action remake, this is probably it. That said, the personal stakes are higher on this one because it's of the animated films, this one's more my baby, so don't fuck it up. The other mind I've got, though, is this is the third of the live-action movies, right? Because we had Cinderella and Jungle Book, and I know you guys enjoyed Jungle Book.
Sort of. Just
Maleficent, yeah, we'll count that one, too. And I would say that my reaction to kind of all three has not really got any higher than tepid and has gone a little bit lower for some of those. So I've not had a great batting average with these films so far. So I want to be more excited than I am. And the teaser trailer does look really good, but I've been fooled before with these Disney live-action movies. Crossing my fingers. I hope it's great, and I hope it's something that, either way, we're going to be reviewing it here on the show. But gosh, don't mess it up. Please, Disney.
Yeah. Well, you know that a good batting average in baseball is around 30%. So but yeah, you're right. If that was your movie batting average, you'd be seeing a lot of shitty movies, right? So,
I'd have been on the bench all season.
That means basically that 2 out of 3 movies would suck, and one would be a hit. But yeah, the ones we mentioned, except for Maleficent, I've kind of liked them. I did like the Cinderella retelling. This one. The Cinderella retelling and Jungle Book retelling were I would say Cinderella was probably the closest to the original material, and then Jungle Book being the next, and then of course Maleficent was like a totally new, reimagined kind of character, which I didn't think worked very well at all. I see this. I'm hoping this Beauty and the Beast kind of follows the Cinderella thing, where it kind of follows the original story very well. Now I don't know how they're going to do, dancing teapots and candelabras and stuff, but I don't know how they're going to do that, but. Yeah, this one has me excited. I mean, anytime they can take a beloved Disney property and try to be truthful to it on one hand, and also inject some new wonder and maybe bring in some new fans to it, I'm all on board. Now, granted, we didn't, as Brad said, we didn't get to see a lot in this one. It was more like here's some shots of kind of going through this castle, not much of hardly any characters at all. But the music, I think it does what a teaser is supposed to do, and that's kind of get you excited, put it on the map, and like, okay, let's see a trailer now.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, definitely the trailer does a great job of sort of setting the atmosphere, right? It's got a great look. The castle is really neat. I mean, it's definitely a beauty, and the beast of it is.
Brad, go sit in the corner.
There's definitely something there when you say that it could totally fall flat on its face, despite how cool the teaser looks. Hopefully, that will not be the case. I guess we'll find out March of 2017. But Will, it's funny you mentioned that Beauty and the Beast is kind of like one of your go-to animated Disney films, and I totally agree. Like I love The Little Mermaid. Little Mermaid's awesome, but like when I think back to like my favorite animated movie as a kid from Disney, it was always Beauty and the Beast. In fact, I always wanted that frickin' mirror. Like that was the coolest thing ever. And as an adult, it's probably a good thing I don't have it, because I'd be like, show me the Cardinals' locker room. That would be a bad thing, probably.
Would it be a bad thing? I mean,
for some people, probably.
I mean, yeah.
But hey, anyway, but great animated film. But I guess the jury's out in terms of live action. We'll have to see how that goes.
I guess one thing that's working for this film, the problem I had with the last three, honestly, Maleficent, Cinderella, and Jungle Book, all fell flat for me because I wasn't a huge fan of any of the lead actors. I don't think that anyone really nailed it for me, and Disney films are very much based around this, like, this one character who has to deal with this magical journey, whatever it happens to be. And if you don't have a compelling lead, you're dead on arrival. This film, we've got Emma Watson cast as Belle. And a pretty high-powered supporting cast: Ewan McGregor, Luke Evans, Ian McKellen, Emma Thompson, Gugu Mbatha-Raw, Stanley Tucci. There's just so many people attached to this that I'm a little more optimistic based on that. I think Emma Watson does have the ability to. I see her as a very convincing Belle.
Anytime you get Emma Watson together with Emma Thompson, it's got to be amazing.
Oh my God, I can't keep it's apart in my head anyway. Just by the name. Yeah.
Oh goodness. All right. Well, Will, what have you got this week?
Yeah, so I've got another casting announcement to talk about. This time from the Nerdosphere. So Thor, the Marvel Cinematic Universe character, his third film is coming out in 2017, and for a while we've known that, of course, Chris Hemsworth was going to be back. Mark Ruffalo, who plays the Hulk, he's been attached to it, as has Tom Hiddleston playing Loki. These were the players that we knew were in the mix. But we've got a few new people that have been pulled into the storyline, and just wanted to go over those with you guys. Some of them have me really excited. One of them has me scratching my head. First of all, Tessa Thompson is coming in as Valkyrie, which is another Asgardian character, going around kicking ass. Tessa Thompson was the female lead from Creed. She was the female lead from Dear White People. this is great casting. I'm really excited to see what Tessa Thompson can do here. Also pretty excited to see Carl Urban playing one of the characters. Carl Urban is, for those who made...
Bones.
I know that name, but where from? Yeah, he's Bones from the new Star Trek reboot movies. He played Dredd in the good Judge Dredd movie, the 2012 one. So he's someone that I think has a lot of potential. The one that has me scratching my head... and Cate Blanchett's in this as well, and she's in a lead role. I love Cate Blanchett. The one that has me scratching my head, though, Jeff Goldblum is going to be in this one, and
Yeah.
they've done a great job with their casting so far. Like, if there's one thing that I think Marvel's done a stellar job of, they're able to get the right people in the right roles at the right time, and I think that's why we're 13, 14 movies deep at by the time this one comes out, and people are still lining up to see them. But man, Jeff Goldblum,
is he going to be like the new human scientist?
Well, he's playing a character called the Grandmaster, and I don't want to go into like the specifics of the character because I want to leave that a little open for people. But he is not a human scientist. He is a person with a lot more going on there, more of an antagonistic role. So I don't know how this is going to play out. I have no idea.
Like in that funk band, Grandmaster Flash, and
no, Grandmaster Flash is DC.
Oh, was that rap? I don't know.
Grandmaster Flash, Grandmaster Arrow, and Grandmaster Supergirl now.
Right. And Grandmaster Legends of Crap. RO.
I've heard as much.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
We just dropped some DC...
Some DC comic nerdism on me?
No, not comics. The CW shows.
The CW.
Yeah,
you know, Flash, Arrow, Supergirl.
And
see, I knew that.
And League of Tomorrow, or Legends of Tomorrow.
Legends of Tomorrow,
yeah.
Legends of Let's Forget It Ever Existed.
Yeah. But anyways, I know I've been talking to a lot of friends who are big fans of the Thor mythos, and a lot of them are really excited about this particular casting. Again, I'm not sure on Jeff Goldblum, but we'll just have to wait and see.
I just hope that Thor 3 is better than 2 because I don't know. I called it Bore 2 because it just did not capture me at all, I guess.
It's and as someone who's enjoyed all of those movies, it is my least favorite of the 12 or the 13, and because it was a perfectly fine movie with a really, really boring villain, and that's you can't. It's hard to come back from that. So maybe Jeff Goldblum, if he is the one of the villains, there's no way he can be boring, right? Like, he can be like really good, or he can be train wreck bad, but he can't be boring, right?
You say that without knocking on wood, Will. Be careful.
Oh shit. That doesn't count.
Oh goodness. Jim, are you at all excited for the new Thor movie, or
not really? I mean, not like I was for the Captain America movies. It's just a totally different level to me. For some reason, I just resonate with the Captain America stuff. And I know, Will, you said you have some friends that are super into the Thor storyline. But to be honest, I mean, the most I remember about the Thor movies, both of them, is where we saw them. Like, I remember we saw one in Massachusetts. I don't know if you remember that, Brad.
Yep.
Saw one there. And, yeah, I mean, they just didn't make that much of an impression on me. So... yeah, Jeff Goldblum, I don't know where he's going to fit. I have no idea about this character you're talking about. And so, Will, I assume that you know this character and you're thinking about how Jeff Goldblum's kind of sensibilities kind of fit this character?
Well, not only that, like, there's certainly a lot of that. You think about like how the character acts versus how the actor acts, but you also think about, when you think about a movie, it's like, no matter who the director is or what the film is, you kind of think about what the aesthetic looks like. And when you drop a particular actor into it, it's all of a sudden like, it's like if you were to just imagine a Jeff Nichols movie and then imagine like I don't know, like Jim Carrey
Bobcat
popping up on
Goldthwait.
screen, or Bobcat Goldthwait, like somebody who's just very discordant with like what you picture. Like
Right.
it immediately makes you pause and go, eh? And, you know, even if the actor like, you know, brings in their A game, or if the director really does something, you know, creative with them, it leaves you pause, and that's kind of what this does. Like Jeff Goldblum feels like an odd pick, and odd picks can sometimes be the right picks.
Right, and like sometimes those odd picks can work in the other direction. Like, oh my God, I can't believe how amazing that was. Like, it kind of came out of left field. I didn't expect that to be that amazing, and it was. So, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see on that one.
Indeed. Well, Jim, what have you got this week?
I got another movie trailer to talk about. So this week, another trailer dropped for Star Trek Beyond. You guys may have heard of that movie. Well, I don't know if you're as much of a Star Trek fan as either Brad or I. Brad being the number one Star Trek fan. I'm probably the number two. But yeah, the first trailer that came out for this several months ago didn't really light the fans on fire, and in fact, many thought it was like terrible. Brad told me he really hated it. For me, it was like, it's interesting. It's got Beastie Boys music. It's kind of brought me back into that world a little bit. But at a kind of a special fan event I think they had last weekend, they dropped a brand new trailer. And this one seems to be way more like what the fans were looking for. I'm just going to read a couple of things here about it. It says, in Beyond, the USS Enterprise and her intrepid crew explore the furthest reaches of uncharted space. Of course, that's one thing that's good, right? We want them to get the fuck away from Earth and get out there in space where they belong. So that's one thing it's got going for it. Where they encounter a mysterious new enemy. Another big plus, right? A new enemy, right? They're not recycling Khan again, or, you know,
spoilers. Jesus.
Yeah. Well, no, that's spoilers for the previous movie, I guess. Anyway, this new enemy puts them and everything the Federation stands for to the test. The film picks up a few years into Enterprise's 5-year mission, so they're getting back to basics, which I think the fans really like. In the trailer, and I can talk about the trailer, right? Because that's not a spoiler, is it?
Yeah.
I mean, you see a unknown enemy attacking the ship, destroying it. So now the Enterprise looks like it's totally destroyed, and people are like, "What the fuck?" There appears to be a peek at a new villain, played by Shere Khan. I mean Idris Elba, which is cool. We know how he can be menacing in a villainous role, so that's good. This one looks like it could be a lot of fun with a lot of action. It looks like, of course, from Justin Lin, the director of the last several Fast and Furious movies. That's what we'd expect. So yes, I do expect to see spaceships like flying all over the place, going fast. I'm gonna love that stuff. But to be honest, that's part of what I liked about Trek too, is when they actually had like these chess matches and ships maneuvering and stuff in space. So anyway, the trailer's got me excited. It comes out July 22nd. So that's not too far away, guys.
It's not.
Oh yeah, it's right around the corner.
I just want to respond to something you were saying. So when the first trailer came out, you're absolutely right. So part of my fear upon hearing that Justin Lin was going to be directing this movie was, like, are we going to have the Enterprise pull up alongside another ship? You're going to see, like, Sulu out the window, like,
flexing his muscles.
Controls. And then you look in the other window, and there's another helmsman, like, total Fast and Furious craziness.
I got family.
And I don't got a crew. I got family. But, that first trailer, unfortunately, had a big job to do, because it needed to establish that this was still going to be a Trek movie. Even though maybe we were going to have some of this Fast and Furious bullshit thrown in, like, at its heart, it was still going to be a Trek film. And unfortunately, you see the Enterprise for like a total of a second in that first trailer. You get a rehash of the Beastie Boys song that they used in the first movie and the first trailer already, and it's all like ground-based action stuff. Like, here's Kirk on a motorcycle, here's Kirk catching a girl in midair, like here's Scotty like falling off. Like, it's all just action, action, action. And one of the cool things about Star Trek is, yes, there's ground action. Yes, you have spaceships that are combating other spaceships or other alien forces, but there's also this sort of like science component. There's this whole like new civilizations thing. There's this whole like cultural clashes where they have to figure out like, how do we as humans from this planet with our own social mores and values interact with these other people who have completely different sets of rules and values. And that's always been where the heart of Trek has been for me. And it wasn't until we got this trailer where we finally got to see some of the bad guy. We finally got to see like who these people are and what's going on that I got interested. I'm kind of excited about this film. I hope that it's going to be as good as this trailer makes it out to be. But I won't lie, it's still got some of that like Fast and Furious feel that probably for me I'm just going to have to get over. It's distracting to me in the trailer. Maybe it won't be so much in the full movie, but that's just me.
Yeah. So you Will, go ahead.
I was going to say that like I'll be very interested in hearing your thoughts when we actually do see the movie, Brad, and kind of going back and seeing like, did this director live up to your expectations, or I guess really exceed your expectations, or did they disappoint you with the franchise that you love? Because that's always hard, to have something that a franchise that you're absolutely in love with. You want to see these characters do well. You want to see more and more of these stories go, but then it gets in these hands and you're just not so sure. And for me, nothing against it, but I'm just not a Star Trek person. Like, it's just not my bag. Different people have different things, and Star Trek just never super did it for me. And so the last couple of movies were fine. I enjoyed them fine enough, but they didn't like light that spark, didn't like really light that fire. And then this first trailer that came out, I know there were a lot of people really offended by just how much ground-based action and how dumbed down that first trailer made the franchise look. For me, it was less offensive. It just was like, whatever. It doesn't look like something I'm interested in, but I probably wasn't the target audience to begin with. That said, it sucked to see people that I know and care about, who see their baby just being squandered and ill-used. So I'm so glad, Brad, that you're liking this trailer a little bit better, and I really hope that we end up with a review here in, when did you say the release date is?
It's like 6 weeks away.
Yeah, like I would love in like 6-7 weeks for us to come back and there to be a big grin on your face and you to have that joy, that Star Trek joy relit.
We'll see.
The question is when they drop that line in there that they're going to drop, where Kirk turns to the enemy guy and says, "They're not just my crew. They're my family." And it would not surprise me if they do something like that.
Oh, no.
I don't know.
Is it okay to is it? I'm not a fan of talking in the theater, but
wasn't there a line
to do that?
Wasn't there a line like that in one of the previous movies? I thought there was, but maybe
in
not.
One of the Fast and Furious movies?
No, one of the Star Trek movies, one of the new ones. I don't know.
I mean, probably not. If there was, it wouldn't have been as direct a reference to Fast and Furious. No. No, for me, it was I think I would audibly boo if they do directly do a Fast and Furious thing.
It's funny. People are saying based on the poster that was released. I don't know if you guys saw it, but it's very much calling back to Star Trek: The Motion Picture. So, maybe Vin Diesel is going to show up as, a bald male version of the Ilya robot from the motion picture.
No, that wouldn't be good either. Because that wasn't really a good movie. So, I don't want to see any of that movie in this one. The poster is fine. The poster looks fine. I just don't care to see any of that first movie. I thought it was a huge letdown for me.
V'ger? You don't want to see V'ger come back?
I don't want to see V'ger. I don't want to see that chick anymore. No.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, before we transition into talking about the movie this week, I wanted to remind you guys, because we see like 10 of you hanging out with us right now, that we would love to hear your comments, your thoughts, take your questions during the show. So, if you're watching on Google Plus or YouTube, you can go ahead and comment on the video, or if at the upper right you see the little thing that says Q&A, feel free to click on that, and you'll be able to write into the show. We'll be happy to respond as long as your comment or question is show appropriate. We've gotten some inappropriate questions before that maybe we could respond to by email, but definitely not on the show.
How come I haven't seen those?
We've shared some of those, just some of the
Oh.
ones that are just like, I'm not going to repeat them here, but
Yeah,
they're not
better
as
not.
much
You just-
questions as much as like very brief demands.
One person one time was like, "How big is your film reel?"
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to encourage our wonderful fans.
No.
We're not encouragers,
No.
so yeah. But feel free to avail yourself of the Q&A and comments. We'll be happy to hear from you guys and respond. But we have a movie to discuss. And before we get into that, again, I'm going to say one more thing. We're going to review. Wow. We're going to review the movie. See my brain splice those things together. We're going to review the movie spoiler-free for about 15, 20 minutes or so. So if you haven't seen Neighbors 2 yet, if you're on the fence, if for some reason you care about our opinion, it somehow influences whether you go see a movie or not, A, we're really flattered that you would think that. And B, we will not spoil you. We'll protect your virginal innocence as long as we can, and then we'll give you fair warning before we rip it away. So you can bail when you need to. But with that said, guys, are we ready? Are we ready to do it?
Let's do it. It's time.
Let's pledge ourselves to this movie.
Oh!
It's Rush Week.
Nice, Jim. That was pretty spectacular. I knew I should have got my paddle out.
It's quality over quantity for me. Sorry.
All right. Here we go. Our discussion of Neighbors 2. No, seriously, I should have gotten my paddle out. It's a keychain paddle that we got from Cinemark for Neighbors 1. Do you remember those, Jim?
I do remember those. We didn't get one this time, did we?
No, they were cheap this time.
Ugh.
Ugh, don't even get me started.
Well, let's see if that hurt them. Well, maybe those keychains made all the difference.
Maybe it would have been a different object attached to the keychain this time. I don't want to spoil anything, but
Oh my
if
God.
you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well,
Would it have been-
we'll get there. We'll get there.
Will gets there? Really?
We'll get.
No, Will doesn't get there.
Oh.
But we'll get there.
Wheel. Oh, I see. Okay.
But this is we're talking way ahead to spoiler areas. Let's start spoiler free.
Of course. Well, we didn't really spoil anything. But
No,
Jim,
but
why don't you give us a little setup here? It's been a little while since Neighbors 1. Tell us a little bit about what this film's about and whether you think people should check it out.
Yeah, the first movie we saw in 2 years ago at South by Southwest, at the premiere at South by, and we enjoyed. I think we mostly enjoyed the first Neighbors movie, pretty much. And so now we've got the sequel, which we inevitably were going to get, called Neighbors 2: Sorority Rising. So let me get into the synopsis here, and then we'll start talking about it. A few years after their ordeal with the unruly guys of a frat house next door, young couple Mac and Kelly, already with one kid and expecting another soon, now find themselves having to deal with the Kappa Nu sorority moving in next door. As the loud parties threaten the sale of their home, the couple turns to ex-frat boy and one-time enemy Teddy Sanders for help. Now united with the former college student, the trio devises schemes to get the wild sorority off the block. Unfortunately, the rebellious young women refused to go down without a fight.
Whoa.
I did not write that. That's just what it
Whoa.
said. Yeah. Anyway, this one directed by Nick Stoller, starring again. We have Seth Rogen, Rose Byrne, Zac Efron, Dave Franco, and joined by Chloe Grace Moretz in this movie, as well as some other supporting casts. So, I mean, having liked the first movie, as we talked about, and expecting just as crazy comedy with, you know, buckets of laugh, this movie kind of ended up as a disappointment for me, unfortunately. Just not really enough laughs. And we'll talk about some of the reasons for that, maybe. But that said, I didn't find the movie as funny as I wanted to, and so that was the reason for my biggest disappointment. A lot of the jokes kind of landed flat for me. Maybe didn't go as far as I thought they could go in some cases. What was the rating on this movie? I'm not sure if it. I don't think it was R. Obviously, I think it was probably PG-13.
No, for Neighbors 2?
Yeah, had to be PG-13.
No, it had to be R. I mean, they were dropping F-bombs like crazy, right?
I don't remember, but look it up while I talk about that. That said, there were still some things that I think this movie got right in a refreshing kind of way. Like, it made me like stand up and say, "Wow, that's really cool what they did there." Things like okay, rated R, great.
Yeah.
Then I don't think they did go far enough in a lot of scenes in this movie, especially with the comedy. I think they could have pushed it a lot further. But they were walking a line, because this movie, surprisingly, for a comedy, you know, you would expect maybe a lot of raunchy frat house humor, sorority house humor. There was a lot of positive gender messages in this movie, quite a bit. Ethnic and body type positive messages. Sexual orientation I thought was handled very refreshingly in this movie. So I give it credit for all those things. And we'll get into what those were and some examples of those. And kudos to this movie for making the effort to do that. Maybe when other movies might have gone for the cheap or like offensive laughs, this movie really didn't go in that direction. I wonder, though, if that kind of affected just the overall comedy effect of this movie. And the other thing is, and this is kind of a rant, and I know the guys that are friends over at the Green Screen of Death podcast would like this. What the fuck is it with Seth Rogen and the pot movies? Like, does every movie he's in have to be centered around the plot device of pot?
I would like to just take a moment. I would like to take a moment, because on the Movie Riz podcast 3 years ago, when we reviewed our first Seth Rogen movie, I was like, "Oh my God, what is it with Seth Rogen movies and pot?" And Jim, you were like, "Hey, Pineapple
That's what he does.
Express. That's okay."
I didn't like Pineapple Express. I did not.
Well, I'm just saying, it's interesting to hear you bring this up after. Anyway,
it's like, you know, this movie had as one of its themes, and again, I won't really spoil, but it's centered around, you know, pot. And look, I am no prude when it comes to recreational drug use, or, you know, by responsible adults in a responsible way. And this movie didn't go crazy with it, but it was there, and it kind of drove the plot at points. And I'm like, oh, come on, dude, find something else that's funnier, you know, because it's getting old. I'd have to just say that because I didn't laugh as much as I wanted to, or as much as I expected, and it was a disappointment, I would say this is a solid wait for VOD recommendation for me. No need to rush and see this in the theaters, especially if you saw the first one. I thought the first one was pretty funny. This one did not, I don't think, matched the first one in terms of its funniness. And, you know, between Keanu, I was kind of hoping for this to be way, way better than Keanu. And to be honest, it might have been a little better than Keanu, but not a lot. So, yeah, I'm still waiting for that comedy to kind of knock my socks off. But what do you guys think?
Way to be blunt, Jim.
Sorry. Was I too blunt?
Hey, does anyone want to smoke some plot?
Yeah, it's a pot point. It's not a plot point. It's a pot point.
Wouldn't be a podcast without terrible puns from.
What has my life become?
You knew what you were signing up for, Will Lindis.
Yeah, I did.
Oh goodness! So I gotta say, once upon a time, I hated Seth Rogen movies, and I started coming around, and Neighbors, the first film, I actually really enjoyed. I really liked it. So going into this one, I'm kind of like, this is probably going to be a good time. I'm on board. And I got to say, I think I liked it better than Jim did, but I'm not like wild about this movie, unfortunately. I love Chloe Grace Moretz. She's one of my favorites. But I felt not great. Not great here. And part of it is it's a comedy, and like she was in what was it a few years ago, movie 42, the balls option movie.
Yeah, movie 42.
She did the like period gag. Remember that?
Oh, yes.
Like,
oh God.
Spoilers, but like blood all over the couch.
Oh yeah, we'll get into that later too.
But like,
Has that back in my brain.
Has she really done other comedies? I don't know. Not that I've seen, I guess. I've seen her in more serious roles. I mean, I know she was Hit Girl in the Kick-Ass movies, and there was some comedy to that.
Yeah.
And definitely, she did that well. But I think that here, I mean, it could have been like any like insert woman here. And for a movie that like has this positive message about like, woman power, I'm kind of like, could we have maybe made her a little, I don't know, more memorable? The other thing is, of course, Zac Efron is back. Seth Rogen is back. And, I definitely enjoy Zac Efron with his clothes off. But as an actor, I don't know. I mean, there were a couple chuckles with some of his shtick, but it wasn't like, I don't know. I didn't feel it was as good as the first film. Part of it, I think, and we'll get more into it in spoilers, is he's obviously older now. He's got different stuff going on. I got more out of his like serious character arc than I got out of his comedy, and I appreciated that. But I found myself thinking like, wait, this is a comedy, not a drama. Like, why am I feeling this way? I don't know. I did appreciate getting to see Seth Rogen as not as clothed sometimes. That was fun. But I felt like this was such a retread of the first movie for him. I felt like his character, pretty much the same character, like other characters grow, they've changed, but I didn't really feel like there had been much progress there for him. So, it's unfortunate. Rose Byrne, I love Rose Byrne. She's great. But I felt like, gosh, I think they were just trying to rake in more cash. I don't know that they were really trying to craft something that was special here.
More money buckets.
Right, they just wanted more.
They wanted 5 buckets of money.
I think
right. Yeah, and we'll be careful not to cross that spoiler line because we did promise. But I mean, I got some laughs, but it wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't great for me. I did want to take a moment real quick just to give a shout out to our listener, one of our favorite guys, Paul from San Antonio. He is stuck at work right now, listening to the show and snacking on some Star Wars goodness.
I thought he was drinking the Star Wars Kool-Aid. That's what I thought he
No, we've long since drank that Kool-Aid.
So my question is, are those like Star Wars gummies, or is that like a Star Wars water bottle, or are they Star Wars vitamins?
Mixed nuts.
Oh, gummy
mixed
vitamins.
Nuts.
Yes. I would totally take gummy Star Wars vitamins.
Right?
Yeah.
If R2-D2 told me to take my vitamins every day in a bottle like that, I would do it. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Totes my goats. We actually got to hang out with Paul at the Red Turtle event a couple weeks ago, so it was good to see him. So Paul, thanks for sending us that picture. Cute as always. But Will, what did you think about Neighbors 2?
So just like you guys, I loved the first one. I actually thought the first one was. I'm trying to think back to what it was up against that year, but it was probably the most laughs I had at a comedy that year, or at least was in the running. There's something about Nicholas Stoller's direction style where he allows a joke to then let another joke appear in the background really quick, like usually like a quick throwaway line or someone reacting to something as the scene just kind of rushes past. And there's something frenetic and interesting and quick-paced about that. I loved the first one, and unfortunately, I didn't really like the second one all that much. It's not that this is not a bad comedy by any stretch of the imagination. This isn't like a worst of the year list. This isn't the type of thing that I can, that I'm going to say, run away from this film at all costs. That said, I'm not recommending it either. As a comedy, the problem with it, for me, wasn't the cast. I felt like we got some decent performances out of the return performers. I think Seth Rogen felt a little more kind of natural and situated in this role and in the first one than he does in a lot of his comedies. I think Rose Byrne is a national treasure. We're claiming her. And I think that, anything that she's in, I find hilarious. I thought Zac Efron did bring a lot of both gravitas and comedic chops. I had no problem with Chloe Grace Moretz. I loved the stuff with Dave Franco, which we'll get to. My problem is that they didn't have anything compelling to do. And so I don't want to take anything away from any of these performers. I think they all brought their A game to they brought their A game to some D+ material. And unfortunately, there's a certain point where like an actor just can't be funnier than the jokes that are on page. This is definitely a retread in a lot of ways, a lot of very similar plot beats. Jim, you're right. There is a lot of positivity in this film, and I thought that was really interesting. I don't think that it necessarily hurt the comedy for me. I felt like the positivity is very reflective of kind of the way youth culture is turning in some ways. Like, a lot of times when we think about college campuses, we are thinking about more of like inclusivity and like, people use like the words like social justice warrior, Tumblristas, and things like that. There's a lot more openness and acceptance at the collegiate level than probably there ever was before, and it was kind of neat to see the way that took shape here. In terms of body positivity, sexual orientation, race, gender politics. I thought all of that was really compelling. I also didn't have a problem with the weed stuff per se, because it's a part of like college culture as well. And the characters of Mac and Kelly are these kind of like in-between grown-ups, like where they're not quite adults, but they're not quite kids, and that felt like kind of a natural extension for them. The problem was that it wasn't written well, so that was my problem. Like, I didn't have a problem with the weed or the fact that it was overly positive. I just had a problem that the jokes within that material didn't land, and there's not a cure for that. There's not if you change this element, this is a successful film. This needed a rewrite. I sometimes have a problem with comedy sequels as a whole. A lot of times, especially ones that come out really quick after the first one, it almost feels like the jokes that didn't make it into the first script got reheated and kind of shoved into the second script. And that's sometimes what we get here. I don't know if that's for sure what we got, but I don't know. It's not a recommend for me. It's probably perfectly fine for VOD. I think you're right. This is something that, like, if you're just watching it for like $2.99, or whatever the cheap rental price is, kind of passively paying attention with some friends, it's probably okay. But this is not worth your multiplex dollars. There are other things to see instead. So yeah, Neighbors 2 is a pass.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to be clear. I mean, my problem isn't. I don't have a problem with the pot use in the movies. It's just that every single Seth Rogen movie, you can expect that to happen. And in this movie, it just wasn't funny. Like,
right.
There was one gag that worked, or centered around the weed, and we'll maybe talk about that in spoilers. But beyond that, it could have been anything to drive that little central plot. You know what I mean? But it had to be weed because it's a Seth Rogen movie, and maybe that's what people expect. I don't know. Maybe that's what his audience expects.
Mm-hmm. Well, it could be, and I mean, my thing is, Jim, I like how you put it earlier, right? You don't have a problem with like adults doing their own thing. They're not hurting anybody. You know what I mean? Like, that's totally cool. That's fine. We watch Richard Linklater movies. I mean, whatever. But, you know, in this case, it's such a trend. What? Days of Confused? Like...
Yeah.
But it's such a...
All right.
I've broken Will. This is awesome. I'm going to focus the camera on Will right now because this is great.
Please do.
You are so red right now, Will. This is awesome.
Well, I mean, Dazed and Confused makes sense, but it was just like, that's to me,
Yeah,
it just is a really funny statement. Like, I at first just like, I'm no prude. I watch Richard Linklater movies.
Oh, goodness.
I'm
But
sorry.
anyway, it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's such a prevalent thing throughout so many of his films that it's kind of like, all right, we get it, Seth Rogen. You like pot, like, okay, cool. But I mean, when you predicate a film on that, unfortunately, kind of goes up in smoke because it's just not that substantial. You know what I mean? And that's unfortunate. But it is what it is. Guys, what do you say? Are we ready for spoilers? Are you down?
I think so. I feel like I feel like it's spoiler time. We've said what there is to say pre-spoiler. I think we're all very lukewarm at best on this one.
Peanut butter spoiler time. Anyway. All right, so we are going to move on into spoilers. If you have not seen Neighbors 2 yet, and you plan on seeing it at some point, you do not want to have the plot spoiled for you. Now is when, if I were posting on Facebook, I would post like 15 lines of dots with a spoiler warning so that you don't see the spoilers without clicking see more. That's what we're doing right now, essentially.
Yeah,
Right?
we're doing that, and then like 8 of our friends are just saying, fuck it, here's what happened last night.
I don't care if you don't want to be spoiled. You shouldn't be on social media if you don't want to be spoiled. You shouldn't be... Anyway, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, here we go. Spoilers for Neighbors 2 are in effect. So, I want to start real quick. I mentioned Seth Rogen, like, in his underwear earlier. It was hot. I was kind of dancing around it. I thought it was kind of fun how, like, in the sex scene at the beginning, before Rose Byrne, like, pukes all over him, she, like, calls him her bear.
Oh, yeah, that's...
I wondered if that was intentional at all. Because we have tweeted Seth Rogen saying he's a hot bear. So, question mark? Did it come from us?
I would like to claim credit for it, knowing that it's not from us. It's one of those things. We don't have exclusive rights on that term. Not just our podcast, but even our large gay furry friends. I've heard of women's like, oh, he's my teddy bear and stuff like that. That said, we are in 2016, and certainly bear is much more of a common term. I think that's one of those things where it gets dropped into the script, and it's one of those things where, yeah, if people pick up on it, it's a great little subtle joke. If they don't, then it totally fits with the character. Either way, that's probably good writing. That's an example of, something subtle and light they can do, so I'm good with that, yeah.
And that's where it stopped.
Yeah. Pretty much. I mean, the problem with this movie for me is that I feel like we ended up with the exact same struggle that we had in the first film, and I feel like at least in the first film, we were really getting to see it from the exploration of this couple that thinks they're young and hip, but realizes that they aren't. So they have a definite story arc in terms of their growth. We got to see Mac and Kelly kind of figure out, like, oh shit, we're adults now, as they deal with these frats. I feel like we got a lot of development, or some development or whatever, with the Zac Efron character, and we got some with the sorority, but this is a story all about, like, what happens to Mac and Kelly, Rose Byrne and Seth Rogen, and I don't feel like they really had any storyline other than we've got to protect our house because we're closing escrow in 30 days. That is a plot point, but that has nothing to do with character development or character growth.
Right.
There's nothing for them to move into. It's just kind of an arbitrary obstacle for them to get through for the movie. And for me, it makes it much harder for me to give a shit about whether or not they triumph over the sorority or not.
Yeah, and I mean that's the exact reason why I like the thing that kind of knocked me over about this movie was the Zac Efron character Teddy's plight, in this movie, and his here he is. It's a couple of years after college, and kind of life and his friends have kind of moved on, and he still hasn't. But he brought, the way he played the role brought some. They didn't play it up overly for laughs. There was some pathos to his character, and I really, really liked the way he played it. I've always liked Zac Efron as an actor. I want to see him do more. But I loved his character in this movie and how he, he started out as kind of a free agent, and then he saw what he kind of helped the sorority girls out because he wanted to fit in. He thought that was a way for him to kind of rejoin that lifestyle that he enjoyed when he was in the frat house. But then he saw it for what it was, and now he's kind of switches teams halfway through the movie and is helping, Mac and Kelly kind of battle the sorority. But yeah, I think that was my favorite part of the movie for him, and especially at the end. I don't know if one of you guys want to talk about the gay couple that kind of came out.
Yeah.
Kind of a surprise treatment for a gay couple in a comedy movie, and they could have gone. I was waiting for that shoe to drop. I was waiting for like the crass, gay joke or whatever, and it never came. And they handled it, I thought, really sensitively. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, did they treat it too much with kid gloves for a comedy movie? I don't know, but I did appreciate the way they portrayed it for the audience.
Yeah, it was definitely handled very positively. I think it's interesting that this character, since the first movie, has apparently since come out and found love, and now they're getting married, and Zac Efron has to leave the apartment because his best bro has gotten engaged.
To a dude.
What happened to bros before bros? I don't know if that's a thing. So it's definitely kind of a cool motivator for Zac Efron to sort of get out there, and I like that it sort of starts him on this path of like questioning his life choices and the path that he's sort of set himself on. I think it's funny, like when they're sitting around the poker table and they're all talking about their jobs, right? Zac Efron's story is, they don't do shirtless, greeters anymore at Abercrombie and Fitch. So now I've got to figure something else out, right? So he recognizes that he's sort of stuck in the muck, so to speak, and it's definitely a retread for his character at the outset, but then you see him switch tracks. Now he's helping Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne and getting involved in those shenanigans, and I don't know. I think I liked that a lot more than I did the whole storyline about the sorority and that being a thing, and we're in escrow and the sorority is gonna kill the deal before it ever gets off the ground. And I want to circle back, Jim. I see you in chat. Bros before Moes. Nice. That's
I'm
awesome.
surprised they didn't drop that one into the movie, but then that would have been.
Well, that's for Neighbors 3.
That would have been against the spirit of the movie, I think.
No, I don't think it would have. That's the thing. Like, you can still be very positive. Like, saying bros before hoes, this is a very gender positive film. But they do say the word hoe several times, and they kind of sort through it, Yeah. So I think they could have used something like that. This is something I think this film could have used more of. I think you could have used the line like, you know what it is? It's like bros before Moes. Oh, shit, am I supposed to say that? No, it's cool, bro. I get it. Like, you can have them kind of figuring that out and make a joke out of it, and that can still be funny. The problem with this movie is that it just didn't write jokes very well. But Brad, you're right. The Zac Efron stuff, I think, was probably the most compelling arc through this film. We have a character who had growth, who had development, who was a different person coming out of this movie. than they were going into it. And I think the sorority stuff and that stuff was kind of the backdrop for that to happen. And I like some of the stuff that happened at the sorority, but really, give me more Zac Efron in this. Like, I think that was really the most compelling part of the movie. In fact, you want to fix the... I said before I didn't know the one thing you can change to fix the movie. Maybe you do center more sequences around this film on him and less around, like, Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne. Kind of like how a sequel will sometimes pass the baton to one of the supporting characters and make them the lead of the sequel. Maybe that's what we needed here, is Zac Efron to be more front and center.
I think this movie would have been completely different and awesome to me if Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne had moved out of that house and Zac Efron had, like, moved in, and then the sorority moved in next door, and he was the central character going through this.
And he's running a straight dude gay wedding planner business.
Out of the house or something.
Out of the
Well,
house.
you can still have Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne show up for, like, you know, a couple of gags at the beginning of the movie. Kind of like the, you know, the passing of the baton sequel thing.
Right, absolutely.
You cut them down dramatically. You make this more about Zac Efron and his storyline. Yeah. I mean, I thought that Dave Franco played it very well. At no point did he was still the same bro that he was from the first time. He didn't... It would have been really easy for them to have, like, kind of turned him into, like, a more of a campy character or a flamboyant character, for him to have played it with a little more pep in his step or something like that. And he didn't. They played a very natural character. Like, this was not a funny movie. It's not one I recommend at all, but I've got to give credit where credit is due. This is one of the most gay-positive films that I've seen in a while, especially for a film that's not a gay-positive movie. So credit where credit's due.
Indeed. Well, guys, any final thoughts on Neighbors 2 before we switch to some plugs?
I did appreciate the fact, and I think this might be a contentious point, I do appreciate that some of the gross-out humor let the girls be gross as well. I don't know if we want to get into that or not. A lot of times in these movies, we get a lot of times where it's... You know, it's dick and fart jokes. We've seen, like, jizz as a punchline in a lot of movies, like Van Wilder movies and stuff like that. You know, it's like, oh, that's gross. So there's a gag with a more a female-centric bodily fluid that's used in this. Do we want to go into it, or?
Yeah, I mean, we might as well. I mean, we're our final thoughts. Let this be our final moment of talking about this movie. So when they take out their, like, bloody tampons and throw them at the house, it's like, okay, there's a line there. They're skirting that line. Gross, whatever. Then, like, Seth Rogen, like, you know, the window's open. He gets a bloody tampon, like, on his face and in his mouth, and you know, I felt like that was maybe going just, like, a smidge too far.
Yeah.
But is that because I'm a misogynist, or is that because it's fucking gross?
Well, it's gross. It's not because you're a misogynist. I mean, I will say it's because we've been kind of... I think if we've seen people get jizzed on and shit on accidentally in movies all the time, and we think it's gross, but I have heard more people with a bit more of a problem with this than some of those than you normally get from this. And it's not misogyny, it's just we're not used to seeing this. This is kind of new territory for us. I appreciate that they let bloody tampons be a part of kind of gross out humor. I don't think it was necessarily well done, and it wasn't necessarily funny. Like, just because it was great that they used it the same way you get to see kind of like other stuff being used, that doesn't necessarily mean that it was used in a funny way here, and that was my problem. Like, they could have done more of a setup with it. Like, there could have been more of a punchline with it. They could have just been more of a joke, other than just like, here it is, it's gross.
Well, right, because like at one point, the 2-year-old daughter or whatever is like holding up a bloody tampon in her hand. Like, would it have been the same thing? Like, if the daughter was holding up, I don't know, like a cum rag or something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just felt like the baby holding up the bloody tampon was a little too far. But you know, mileage varies.
Yeah, well, I mean, anytime we talk about these gross out comedies, it's all too far. So like I said, I appreciate that they got there. You know, that we got to mix it up. That we got to see again. It's fitting in the tone of this movie, right? Like, women can do everything men can do. It's very, very equal opportunity. I just wish that there was more of a joke there. I just wish that there was something that, I don't care how gross it is, just make it funny. And that's where they failed.
I did learn something, though. Apparently in the Greek system, frats can have parties, but sororities can't. Like, what the fuck is up with that?
Is that fact-checked, though?
True? I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true. I think it is.
So I just typed into the Google, can SORO, and it autofilled with itties have house parties.
That's exactly what I did at the exact same point. Can SORO
Yep.
Ritties have house parties? Yeah.
So here it is. Why aren't sorority women allowed to drink in their own houses? Why frat bros can throw parties but sorority sisters aren't allowed to? It's a thing. It's totally a thing.
It's totally a thing. So kudos to this movie for shining light on something, I guess.
Yeah.
Shine a light.
This movie is really good at coming up with issues. It's a comedy that's just not very good at being a comedy.
Yeah, it might have worked better at being more of a straight up drama or I don't know, less of a comedy, because that's what it ended up being.
Indeed. Well, let's go ahead and move on to some plugs. Will, what have you got this week?
So this is a movie that I saw at Fantastic Fest that I've been waiting for it to hit theaters, and it looks like it's in limited release. Has been for a couple of weeks now, so it's possibly at a theater near you. It's this movie called The Lobster. So this is a new movie by the director is Yorgos Lanthimos. He's the guy that did Dogtooth a few years ago, and a few other films. This is a really unique film. It's like near future. And the city has these very specific laws, and the laws are if you're single, you're taken to this hotel. You have 45 days to find the person that you're going to be with for the rest of your life, and if you don't, you're transformed into the animal of your choice and shipped off to the woods. Your main character here is this dude named, this dude played by Colin Farrell, who opts to be, if he doesn't find his mate, to be turned into a lobster, hence the title of the movie. Really interesting movie. It says a lot about the relationship standards of being single, being in a relationship, kind of both of those dynamics and how they're really weird, really warped, with a really neat little kind of parable, this weird warped story around it. Cool performances. This is just a really cool movie. Really original, like nothing else you've ever seen. So if you get a chance to see The Lobster, you totally should. It's really cool.
Awesome. Now I want to give a shout out to Movie Bears Podcast TV, which is going to be recording tomorrow relative to when we're recording. So depending on when you're listening, it's probably already out. Someone is sending me things on Skype, if that's that noise you're hearing. Those are nice things to be sent on Skype. We'll save that for later. Anyway, so I want to give a shout out to MBP TV because we had a fairly big episode of Game of Thrones this last weekend. We're going to have a lot to talk about there. Also, Survivor wrapped up, so we're going to be talking about that as well as reviewing the premiere episode of a new show called Preacher. So we'll be recording that Tuesday night of this week. So again, if you're listening in iTunes or Stitcher on digital tape delay, that episode's likely already out and available as well. So give it a listen if any of those shows pique your interest. Jim and Will, open invite to you guys. If you want to join us for the Survivor or Game of Thrones talk, you are more than welcome. Just let us know and we'll slot you in.
We'll see. Maybe I'll poke in. Who knows?
You're pretty good at poking in. Anyway, Anyway, all right. So Jim, why don't you plug the Movie Bears podcast? Where can people find our past episodes? How can they interact with us online?
Of course, they can find us at www.moviebearspodcast.com. They can also look out for our Facebook at Movie Bears Podcast and on Twitter at MBP. I think it's MB Podcast on Twitter. Also, you can look for us individually on Twitter. I am at God. What is my Twitter handle?
JJP Out West.
At JJP Out West. And Brad, what's yours?
You can find me on Twitter at ThatKentCharm.
That Kent Charm, and Will.
And I'm at Whatever Cove.
Nice. But yeah, that's how you can find us. So you can find all of our past episodes. You can listen to episodes right on the website, or of course, download us at iTunes. Listen to us at Stitcher Radio. Usually within 2 days of our. Also, you can find us on YouTube at our YouTube channel. You can see our videos from our live broadcasts. Where on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, you can listen to the edited audio.
Indeed, because if you're just listening to the audio, you are missing 3/4 of the fun, I say. Because, I don't know, I enjoy looking at you guys while we talk about movies. It's fun for me. It's fun for other people, too.
Yeah, that's just fun.
Yeah. So we got one last live comment, guys. Parting thoughts from our buddy Mick Jones from DC, who says, just say no, Jim. Just say no.
Just say no.
In your reference to the pot talk, I think.
Maybe. Now people are going to think I'm a total prude, and I'm not. I mean,
You wore a green
Richard
shirt.
Linklater movies, yeah.
You wore a
I
green
watched
shirt, and you watched the Before Midnight series, so you're good, right?
That's right. I'm all over.
Oh, goodness. Mick, we love you. Hope we get to see you soon. And we'll see the rest of you soon. Next week, what's coming down the pipeline? We'll figure it out.
Maybe X-Men?
I don't know.
Is it X-Men this weekend?
Maybe.
We had a choice of Neighbors 2 Sorority Rising and The Nice Guys last week. I'm not sure we picked the right movie, but
oh no. Well, we chose the one that probably more people saw, but I don't know that we chose the best movie. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. We've had no less than 3 people ask me if we were going to be reviewing Angry Birds this week. They're saying they're waiting for our Angry Birds review.
Wow.
Well, then maybe we did choose the wrong one. Although maybe it sounds like
Brad, if you would like to see that review, go ahead.
All right. Well,
we'll figure it.
Yeah, we'll figure out next week at some point, and we'll see you then. Take it easy, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.